Good afternoon. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. So some thoughts, some phrases have been swirling around in my mind since this morning. And I haven't kludged them into a coherent thought, let alone philosophy. But I think y'all, you're like me in some ways. I mean, we have a lot of things in common or you wouldn't be here watching this. And then again, you're different. So you might come at it from a different way. And I think in our diversity lies our strength. Doesn't that sound gross? But there's truth to that, right? And some of those phrases are, you can't straddle the fence, pick a side. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Jesus said, "He who is not with me is against me." I think some Confederate general quoted that also and said, "Them that ain't with us is agin us," something like that. Jesus said, Yeshua, you can read it in Revelations, that, you're neither hot nor cold. I wish you were either hot or cold, but you're lukewarm. And because you're lukewarm, I'm going to spew you, vomit you out of my mouth. My son has a phrase that he uses and a concept that you can't have it both ways. You're either in the world or you're out of the world. You can't be a little bit in. You can't straddle it and try and take the good from this and the good from this. He goes, you're either in the world or you're out. And we've talked about it a little bit. And again, these aren't fully developed philosophies, okay? But the concept is, if you go and get a regular job, 9 to 5, and I'm not against regular jobs, but if you go and get a regular job, that means you have to have transportation. You have to maintain a certain appearance for most jobs. You have to wear certain clothing. It all just keeps tying in, and then, you got to live close to your job, and dun. And then my wife has an idea she's been playing with lately, which is you have two choices. You always have more than two choices, but, again, it's just a loose theory. And she said, you can either go digital or you can go medieval. And her line is, you either get sucked into this digital age with, this iPhone that I'm filming on, the internet that you're watching it on, the solar power that, is powering all this stuff, which then makes you reliant on the system to a degree. And if you really want to get out of the system, you got to kind of go medieval. I know there's problems with that. I read an article, probably 20-something years ago. You may be able to find it on YouTube. I don't know. I think it was written by an Air Force guy, called "Smashing the Laser Rangefinder with a Rock." And his basic premise was that we have all this super high technology, we, the United States military, we have all this super high technology, but when we try and apply that technology against, and I think he was referring to Somali warlords, but you could say against Afghan warlords and warriors, when we try to apply that technology to somebody who's at a much lower technological level than we are, it doesn't really work that well. And then there are ways to counter it. Example, unclassified examples. Black Hawk Down. Everybody's seen that movie and knows about it, right? We, the U.S. government, military, was in Somalia chasing after Mohammed Farah Aidid, a warlord. And we were trying to round him up and get his people and stop his warlordism. And, the way we operate, we were over there with Delta and Rangers and the Night Stalkers. Night Stalkers don't quit. We own the night. Right? That was another motto. Because we as a military force, owned the night. Quick aside, because some of y'all like stories. After the first Gulf War, which lasted, the actual war lasted about 100 hours. we had an Iraqi general who was a brigade commander that we had captured, and they were interrogating him, very polite interrogation, sitting across the table with cigarettes and tea or coffee or something, being spoken to by a guy who I knew, who was another colonel, and they're just talking back and forth. They're not really trying to get anything out of him. And he goes, hey, he goes, how did you guys get across that trackless desert? The Iraqi asked the American, how did you guys come all across? How did you see? It was the dark of the moon and it was dark. I mean, how did you guys do that? He goes, oh, hold on, let me show you something. And he calls for a set of night vision devices. And back then they were PVS-7s, which is a lower grade than we have now. These little, night vision devices, strap them to your head. And he takes the guy out of the room and he takes him out into the base camp and he lets him look around with him. And the Iraqi was amazed at these night vision devices. And he goes, no wonder you could come across the desert like that. Do all your brigade commanders have one of these? Now, a brigade commander commands about 1,500 to 2,500 troops, right? And so he said, do all your brigade commanders have one of these? And the colonel who told me this story looked at him and goes, no, all our team leaders, E5s, sergeants and above, have these. And the guy was flummoxed. It's like, who can stand against the beast? Well, now all our soldiers have night vision, and it's better night vision devices. And so we own the night. So now let's fast forward back to the story of Somalia. So all our troops have the night, we own the night. Night stalkers out there flying around, they can see it just, very well at night. And so what the bad guys started doing is not meeting at night. Normally in, centuries past, clandestine organizations would meet in the middle of the dark night somewhere so people wouldn't see them coming together. Well, they knew that, man, they were at a grave disadvantage at nighttime. So at nighttime, they were all in their little hidey holes, hiding, not doing anything. And they would come together in the daytime for meetings, which is why we did the attack. But it thwarted a lot of our technology, a lot of our abilities were thwarted because they were meeting during the daytime. The enemies figured that out. If we're gonna give the Americans an opportunity to attack, let's do it in the daytime when we can see them. Smashing the laser rangefinder with a rock. I have told you guys over and over and over again that if you emit electronically, it is picked up. Most of you probably don't believe me. That's okay. Al-Qaeda believes it. They got tired of eating Hellfire missiles every time they turned on a cell phone, and so now they use couriers, where they say, here, Ahmad, take this over to whoever, and pass this handwritten note. How do you intercept that? The only way you can intercept that is to intercept that person in a whole city full of people when you don't know who's who. You can't just listen on the airways. It's smashing the laser rangefinder with a rock. And so you're either in or you're out. If they try to use their little Baofeng radios or their little, what's that Norwegian radio? Thor or something, I don't know. Anyway, if they try to use some modern technology radios, just a little bit, well, then we're on them like white on rice. And so it strikes me that as things go forward, and now we're going to get to my eschatology a little bit, but we have to, as I see this thing playing out, at some point, it says in the Bible that everyone is going to have to receive the mark of the beast in their right hand or in their forehead. And those without it can't buy, trade, or sell. And those who receive the mark, you're damned. You're done. You're toast. No excuse. It's like, well, man, how are we going to do anything? Indeed. How are you going to do anything? Could you imagine, could you envision, because I can, a community of a bunch of hippies sitting around on their laptops, man. I'm kidding about that part. But picture a group of people, say 50, say 150. We'll go, what's that, Dunbar's number or somebody's number? Men, women, children, older, younger, living in a village, right? Today. like you create one. And you grow a huge garden and you raise chickens and goats and, ducks and cows. You grow all your food. You grow more food than you need so that you sell some, um, at the local midweek farmers market or something. Um, because in our modern society, you're always going to need some cash, right? But you have the lady who raises, it could be a man, just work with me here. The lady who raises the wool sheep, and um, maybe she shears them, or maybe her husband does, or whatever. Somebody shears them. Somebody else cards it and spins it into yarn. Somebody else walks out into these woods and gathers natural dyes and makes different natural dyes. And then somebody else has a loom, or they know how to knit or something. And so what you end up with is handmade, naturally dyed sweaters, high-end sweaters, um, you know, lovingly handcrafted by the saints at Shofar Mountain, right? Um, what could you sell that sweater for today on the internet? And I realize that I'm contradicting my thing, but I'm just trying to talk this out. I'm kind of thinking this out loud with y'all sitting here, and then y'all can throw stuff in. On the internet today, you could probably sell that sweater for $300 to $400. You couldn't sell it around here for $300 to $400, but you could sell it on the internet. And when the balloon went up, and the internet died, and everything's done, everybody in your community would have a really good sweater. Same thing with a blacksmith. You could have a blacksmith shop, and right now, today, he's making knives. Could be a she. Knives and swords and armor for the SCA people, and stuff that they sell on the internet. But then when the world goes crazy, you got a guy who's you need a set of hinges for the barn, so you go to blacksmith and he makes them for you. Now I realize I just went around in a circle, and that's 2 feet in the world, right? You got some in technology and some not. So maybe it is possible. This is where it would be better if we were actually sitting around talking, because I'm kind of want to hear some input right now. Maybe it is possible to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out for now, to make the most advantage of the ability to do that. But always be prepared, and probably predetermine your little line in the sand when, boop, community's pulling the plug. We're smashing our cell phones, we're crushing our laptops, and we're locking the gate. And now everybody in the village is self-sustaining until this world comes back to the point where we can trade our wares further outside than the village. Maybe. Maybe. Today's not a lecture. Today's, I really would like, this would be really cool to be sitting around my little campfire right out here and talking about this tonight with a group of about 10 or 15 people. Maybe I'll bring this up with the Shofarians the next time we get together. Maybe the question isn't either one or the other. Because I realize you're either with the Father or you're not. You're either with Yeshua or you're not. I get that. But that doesn't necessarily translate over to life. Clearly, I am using technology. And I am preparing myself to have no technology.